and welcome to the Bruce Channel. I'm Bruce. We've got a riot again today, so sit back and smell the coffee or drink your coffee, smell the roses, either way. And if you're missing that extra hour of sleep they always tell us about, then have an extra cup of coffee. I mean, is it really such a big deal? If it is, go to bed an hour earlier or sleep an hour later. It is only an hour. Here's what I don't understand. So we moved an hour ahead, and for me and maybe everyone else, it's not the lost hour. It's the slight disorientation we feel with the natural daylight. You know, the mornings have been getting lighter sooner and sooner, and we get home from work and it's still light a little bit, and now suddenly that's, boom, changed in a big hurry, and it will be dark in the mornings again. And there's a little bit of weirdness to that, but here's the thing. We moved the clocks ahead, and we're just over a week until the equinox. So it will be darker in the morning, and the kids will be waiting at the bus stops. But why, on the flip side, do we hold on to daylight saving well past the equinox, until the first Sunday in November? That's fully 6 weeks past the equinox. Those 6 weeks, I think, are egregiously putting kids at risk because it's very dark in the fall. Why don't they have it balanced, a week either side? Anyway. All right, so last week I had an oversight. I'd meant to mention it last week, but it slipped my mind, which I've observed happens more and more. And more and more. Anyway, last week we did talk about the Oscars and the slip-up that had the wrong film being announced as Best Picture, and it was a simple slip-up, and it did get corrected, but the whole night, or at least halfway through, I think, there was a certain bit of poignant irony that was shared by people watching on television. Maybe you remember what I'm speaking of. There was a Rolex commercial, which featured iconic scenes from iconic movies, all of which shared one thing. A Rolex was prominently seen. Peter Sellers, Paul Newman, Faye Dunaway, Charles Bronson, Harrison Ford, Marlon Brando. And we can assume that it wasn't planned this way, that the commercial had been conceived of and written and produced well in advance. And certainly not all the actors in the commercial are still with us. Brando, Sellers, Bronson, they're long gone. But it was only the day before when we got the news that Bill Paxton had died. It was unexpected. Few knew he'd been ill, so it was kind of eerie, to say the least, to have him appear in probably his own most recognized role, that of the underwater Titanic treasure hunt.
Great ship sitting here, where she landed at 2:30 in the morning of April 5th.
Turns out Mr. Paxton had an aortic aneurysm repaired and a valve replaced at Cedars-Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles. And that was on Valentine's Day. Less than 2 weeks later, he died of a stroke. As a director, he wasn't as well known, but he did direct some films of note, and maybe because I am a golfer, but also somewhat of a student of the game. Among my favorite films is the one he directed called The Greatest Game Ever Played. It was a great game, the 1913 U.S. Open, and I thought it was a terrific movie. Thanks for making it, Mr. Bill Paxton. Rest in peace. All right, for a lot of people, the next 3 weeks are like the best part of the year, and not because of the spring or warming temperatures, but because March Madness is officially on hand, and actually you could make the case that it began this past week, in as much as that's when the conference tournaments have been played, and they wrapped up either Saturday or Sunday, and then the selection committee goes to work deciding whom to invite to the big dance, and, you know, not only whom to invite, but which site to put them in and how highly or lowly they're seated. Some of it is a given. North Carolina is going, so is Duke, but there's always a surprise or two, because even if your team is terrible, if you get lucky or hot, or better, lucky and hot, and you win your conference tournament, you're automatically invited. Now, at the end of football season, I watched the selection show. And, you know, that's when they choose 4 football teams who are invited to the championship. Well, a lot of people are going to be watching tonight to see where their favorite basketball teams end up. So, by the end of next Sunday, we'll have eliminated half of those invited, leaving the Sweet 16. 2 weeks, we'll know who the final four will be, and then those four will play on April the 1st, with the two left standing playing for all of it on April 13th. So, have you a favorite? It's more fun if you've got someone to root for or against. I've decided this year to root for Gonzaga. They often do well in the tournament. They are having a terrific year, and it would be great if they actually won it. See, the North Carolina Tar Heels have like 30,000 students on campus. Gonzaga's got under 7,500 students. Schools like Michigan or Ohio State have almost that many professors. So, true enough, I've got friends in a lot of places, so I could take heart if the Tar Heels win, or if the Blue Devils win, or the Buckeyes, or even the Jayhawks. But for now, go Zags. All right, I saw a cool thing this week. Mutually exclusive friends, that is friends of mine who don't know each other, each posted this, and it's really cool. What it is, a movie camera or a video camera all have a frame rate per second. For video, it's commonly 29 or 30 or 25 or even 60. So long as the camera's frame rate is an exact multiple of the frame rate aligning with where the rotors are, it looks as if they're not moving at all. Take a look at this one. It's a camera's frame rate that in westerns makes wagon wheels or car wheels speed up or slow down or even go both ways simultaneously, like on this truck. Frame rate is also responsible for slow motion. The first film I was in, Samka, by 4 Leagues Media, used a camera. I think it was 7,000 frames per second, but then if you run that at 30, it'll very slow down. So, and that's why you can make animation. If you change the picture at least 15 times a second, the brain sees it as solid motion. Slower than that, and we see the gaps. My brother was quite the animator. He's very creative when he was a little kid. Now, in first grade, he came in first place in a statewide drawing contest. And although he is not an artist today, it still amazes me how he can effortlessly turn out such clever images. But when he was a kid, he also had sort of a Stephen King kind of twisted sadomasochistic creativeness. So he'd make little short animated stories using the margins of paperback books, little flip books. It didn't hurt the books. We had a lot of books, so he could make these very strange stories. My favorite was a guy walking along, minding his own business, when he was picked up by a giant hand who dribbled him as though he were a basketball. Gonzaga. Anyway, and then he tossed him down. The man was groggy, stunned. I wish I could find that book and show it to you. Speaking of books, hey, let me tell you about my book, Shrink. Or wait, I can let others do it. right, welcome back. Remember, you can watch all of our previous shows either at our Facebook page or at tinyurl.com/Bruce Channel. And you can write to us at the Bruce Channel at yahoo.com. So, a couple of weeks ago, I'd mentioned that Mardi Gras was coming up, and of course it came up and it went. But around that time, I was talking to a friend of mine. I said, really? February 28th, isn't that kind of late for a Mardi Gras? And I wasn't sure, so I looked it up, and turns out I was way off. It wasn't especially late. And how do we fix the date? Of course, we start with Easter, which is the first Sunday after the first full moon after the vernal equinox. And then from that Sunday, we count back 46 days. Why 46? Because back when the Roman Church was making up the rules, and by the way, the Orthodox Church today still figures it differently, but per the Roman rules, you didn't have to fast on Sunday. So the 6 Sundays didn't count, and they wanted to fast a full 40 days. So the earliest Ash Wednesday can be is February 4th. The latest it could be is March 10th. So Mardi Gras could be as early as February 3rd or as late as March 9th. And by the way, neither is imminent. The next March 9th Mardi Gras is 2038. But the next February 3rd Mardi Gras is, wait for it, actually you can't. It would be impossible to wait for it. It's not until the year 2285. So to complete the comparison, this year's February 28th was later than smack in the middle, but not really so special. And I'm not sure why I didn't notice those other times when it began this late or even later in March. I must have been having a lot of gras on those particular Mardies. All right, so last week we talked about the Oscars and the mistake, and, we showed when Sammy Davis Jr. was given the wrong envelope back in 1964. And I briefly mentioned that he was an amazing entertainer, how he could sing and dance and do impressions and handle a 6-gun. So I went back to see, and I did find, turns out he showed off that back on a horse opera.
Ladies and gentlemen, we present to you the fastest gun in the West, Tip Curry. And I'd come riding in with Coco over there. He slows down just enough to let me kind of slide off nice and easy. Then I give it one of these here. And all of a sudden, the crowd kind of comes to quiet. Then I start my tricks. Flat spins, all kinds of spins, little tricks that catch their eye, everything like this here. Kind of easing and all the way, doing flat spins and everything like that. And then, finally, to wind up with one of these.
I'm not going to show you all of that, but later in the scene, he tosses a can in the air and he shoots it. And then with a knife, he carves a circle on wood, and he backs up 12 paces or so. He throws the knife into the circle, but before the knife gets there, he pulls out his gun and shoots. And of course, all of that is done with film and cuts and takes, and it's impressive, but it's just film. Even the twirling the gun scene there was mostly one cut, but it isn't just one. And even if he were to have dropped it, they simply would say, cut, take 2. But look at this. This was before a live audience.
As I walked out in the streets of Laredo, as I walked out in Laredo one day, I spied a young cowboy wrapped up in white rain.
Shucks, I wouldn't put it on unless I was good at it.
You see, single action means, like, unless you have the modern revolver, they can fire this way by just pressing the trigger. With the old-fashioned Western gun, you had to cock the gun first and then fire. So that, in essence, when you go for the fast draw, the gun is actually cocked while it's in the holster, like so. See, it's cocked here. You pull out and then fire. Of course, you must be careful that when you do this, you don't do that. Or you'll find out immediately why Chester walks with a limp.
Now, I'll tell you, I was most impressed by how he could do the tricks and talk in normal cadence, both in the film and in the stage show. I have been at the piano in restaurants, and I have been at the organ in ballparks. And sometimes people come up and talk to you while you're playing, and that's okay. I can listen, I can play. I can even play, listen, and talk. But sometimes, not always, but sometimes my words came out in a cadence or rhythm that matched what I was playing. That's true. All right, so earlier we touched on animation, and here's something that's truly special. It was originally posted by the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam, and it has been viewed something like 24 million times, so you may have been one of the 24 million, but if you're not, take a look, and I'll bet you, even if you are one of the 24 million, I'm pretty sure you won't mind seeing it again. What makes it special, and I'm not sure of the process, but somehow, maybe many artists collaborating, or maybe just a few, but they recreated several of Van Gogh's paintings and animated them, streaming into one another. Take a look. So we are an amazing species, capable of love, of incredible warmth, impossibly beautiful art, impossibly beautiful music. We can assemble words that uplift and at the same time be disgustingly brutal or unimaginably cruel, or maybe saddest of all, indifferent. All right, some quick hitters. We did have a brief cold snap last weekend, but rebounded back into the 70s. And we're diving again this weekend, again jeopardizing the nation's fruit trees. At my deadline, we think we're going to have snow on the ground Sunday morning. Ought not be a big deal, even here in Bama country. Red and local alert, because it's a Sunday morning, traffic is lighter, and the warm weather has meant the ground is pretty warm. We're expecting maybe an inch or less. So watch, next week, I'll tell you we got buried. Tuesday is a big day for pie. Not cherry or blueberry, but 3.14159 and like that. So really, it's National Pie Day. So go out and have fun, calculate areas and arcs and whatever else we do with that. The following day, of course, beware the Ides of March. So beware. And especially of anyone with cutlery, especially if they have a lean and hungry look. And if you survive the Ides, then you can really let it rip come Friday, because while it always engenders parties when it falls on a Friday or Saturday, the corned beef and the cabbage and the green beer really come together. So I certainly hope you survive the Ides. I hope you party hardy come Friday. And in fact, I hope that your upcoming week is the best one you've ever had.